My name is Caleb Doran, and I am 34 years old. And I am standing in the parking lot of a building I now own, in a town that told me I would amount to nothing. And my hands are shaking so bad I can't get the key into the lock. It's 9:12 in the morning. October. The air smells like creek water and diesel fuel. The way it always has, the way it did when I was a boy. And for a second, my entire body goes somewhere I did not invite it to go. Something in my chest pulls left, like a compass needle that still knows where it was made. The building is called the Mercer Block. 3 stories. Red brick, 400 square feet of commercial space on the ground floor, 4 storage units above it that I am going to gut and convert. I paid $312,000 for it 3 weeks ago, which is $312,000 more than anyone in the town of Sullen Creek, West Virginia thought I would ever have. I know this because some of them said so. Out loud, to my face, I finally get the key in. The lock turns. The door swings open and it smells like dust and old carpet and something faintly chemical. Like the kind of smell that lives inside a building for 40 years and doesn't know it should leave. Stand in the doorway and I do not go inside yet. I just stand, there with the October light hitting the back of my neck. And I think about my mother, Patricia Duran, who is 61 and still lives 12 minutes from here and who called me last Thursday and said, in a voice I have known my entire life, "Caleb, you don't have to do this to prove something." And I said, "I know." "Mom!" And I didn't explain that she had the wrong verb. I wasn't doing it to prove something. I was doing it because 11 years ago, I left this town with $340 in my wallet and a garbage bag of clothes and the sound of people laughing at me. And somewhere in the intervening years I had quietly, methodically, without anyone watching, become the kind of person who could come back and buy the thing they laughed at me for wanting. I step inside. The dust rises. The thing about coming back to a place that hurt you is that it doesn't feel like victory. Let me take you back. Not all the way, just far enough for this to make sense. I grew up in Sullen Creek, which is a real place, and it sounds like a name someone invented to make a point, and I promise you it isn't. Population 4,200 when I was born, about 3,600 now, the kind of town that has 1 stoplight and a Dollar General and a diner called Patsy's that has served the same 3 laminated pages of food since 1987. Good food, actually. Patsy Vollmer, who was 64 then, and I assume is still alive and still behind the counter, made a biscuit that I have not found the equal of in 11 years of trying. My father, Gerald Duran, was 52 when I left and worked maintenance at the county school district. Good man, quiet man, the kind of man who fixes things without talking about it. He had calloused hands and a joke for everything, and never once in my life told me what to do, which I understood later was its own kind of love, and also its own kind of abandonment, and I am still figuring out where the line is. My mother managed the front desk at the one medical practice in town, Dr. Aldous Kramer's office, which handled everything from strep throat to mental health referrals because in Sullen Creek, Dr. Kramer, who was 69 and had been practicing since before I was born, was what you had. She is a warm woman, my mother. She is also a woman who calculates risk in units of what will people think, and that has shaped everything between us in ways I am still tracing. I was 23 when this story really starts. I had been back in Sullen Creek for 8 months after 2 years at Marshall University, which I had left without a degree because I ran out of money and too much pride to tell anyone. I was working at Ridgeline Hardware on Clement Street for $11.40 an hour, and I was doing something in the evenings that nobody in town knew about. I was building a business plan, not metaphorically, literally. I had a spiral notebook and a laptop with a cracked screen, and I was learning everything I could about commercial real estate development. I had found a YouTube channel run by a man named Terrence Okafor in Columbus, Ohio, who explained finance and acquisition and property rehab in plain language, and I had watched every video he made, some of them twice. My plan was specific. I wanted to buy the Mercer Block. The Mercer Block had been sitting empty since 2014, when the last business, a print shop run by Dennis Garfield, had closed. It was owned by a man named Harold Pruitt, who was 71 and lived in Charleston, and had no interest in developing it, and also, apparently, no interest in selling it at a price anyone in Sullen Creek could afford. I had done the research. I knew the assessed value. I knew the renovation estimate, which I had gotten by being friendly with Mike Tully, who was 44 and ran the only general contracting operation in the county. I knew what rents were in the surrounding counties for commercial ground floor space. I had a 5-year model in my notebook with 3 scenarios: conservative, moderate, optimistic. And even the conservative scenario showed a path. I was telling people about this. I understand now that was the mistake, not the dream, the telling. It was a Tuesday in March. I know it was a Tuesday because Patsy's had a Tuesday special, half-price soup, and I had been eating the half-price soup every Tuesday for 8 months, because $11.40 an hour, after you subtract the rent on my efficiency above the laundromat on Polk Street, did not leave a lot of room. I was at Patsy's with 4 people I had grown up with: Darren Hollis, who was 25 and worked at the county garage; Stephanie Vance, who was 24 and worked at the school; Marcus Webb, who was 24 and drove a truck for a propane company; and Darren's girlfriend, Tina Fasulo, who was 23 and worked the evening shift at Dollar General. I liked all of these people. I want to be clear about that. They were not bad people. They were people who had found a ceiling and made their peace with it. And they could not understand why I kept looking up. I had made the mistake, over the previous few months, of talking about the Mercer block plan with most of them, in pieces. The way you do when you're excited about something and you can't help yourself. That Tuesday, I had just gotten off a phone call I was excited about. I had located Harold Prewitt's nephew, a man named Glenn Prewitt, who worked at an insurance agency in Beckley, and Glenn had agreed to pass my name along to his uncle. It was nothing. It was a thread. But I was 23, and it felt like something. I told them. Marcus looked at his soup. Stephanie looked at Darren. There was a beat of silence that I felt in my back teeth. Then Darren said, "Caleb, you make $11.40 an hour at a hardware store." He wasn't being cruel. He was being what he thought was honest. "I know," I said. "That's not where I'm going to be." "You dropped out of college," Tina said. She said it gently. She meant it gently. "I know that too." "Harold Prewitt is not going to sell that building to someone who stocks shelves at Ridgeline," Marcus said. "I don't mean that bad. I just mean, that's not how it works." Stephanie looked at me with a kind of tired sympathy. "Caleb, you've been talking about this for months. Nobody's going to take you seriously. You don't have the background. You don't have the money. You don't have, where's the money coming from?" "I'm working on that part." "That's the whole part," Darren said. The soup was tomato. I remember looking down at it and then back up. And I remember something happening in my chest that was not anger and was not shame. It was something flatter than both of those, like a sound dropping out, like a radio finding static instead of a signal. I did not yell. I did not argue. I did not make a speech. I said, "Yeah, you're probably right." I finished my soup. I left exact change, which was $2.47. I walked out to my car, a 2007 Honda Civic with 193,000 miles and a broken driver's side mirror, and I sat in it for 22 minutes. I was not crying. My hands were flat on my thighs, and I was looking at the window of Patsy's, and I could see them in there, talking, probably about something else already, and I understood something that I did not yet have words for. The words came later. What I understood in that moment was just, not here. I drove to my efficiency, and I took the spiral notebook from the nightstand, and I opened it, and I looked at the 5-year model with the 3 scenarios. Then I looked up Greensboro, North Carolina, which I had looked up once before because Terrence Okafor had mentioned it in a video. Population, median income, commercial real estate market, cost of living. I started making a different kind of list. I gave my notice at Ridgeline Hardware on March 18th, and I told my mother on March 20th, and I left Sullen Creek on April 3rd. The notice was fine. Terry Briggs, who was 56 and managed the store and was a decent man, told me I was making a mistake, and then shook my hand. He gave me a reference I didn't ask for, which I have never forgotten. My mother was harder. She sat at the kitchen table and she held her coffee cup with both hands, and she said, "What is in Greensboro, Caleb?" "Work," I said. "A different kind of market, room." "Room for what?" for me to become something that isn't going to happen here. She didn't argue. She just held her coffee cup tighter and looked at the table. And my father, who was in the living room and could hear everything, turned the television up slightly, which was his way of giving us privacy. The week before I left, Darren called me once. Didn't leave a voicemail. Stephanie texted, "Heard you're leaving." "Seriously?" I wrote back, "Yeah," and she said, "Okay, good luck." That was the last time we talked for a long time. Marcus said nothing. The silence of it sat differently than Stephanie's text. I kept thinking about it in the car on the way south. I drove through the mountains with the garbage bag of clothes in my back seat and $340 in my wallet, and I kept coming back to Marcus, saying nothing. We had known each other since the 4th grade. I pulled off the highway at a rest stop outside of Roanoke at 7:24 p.m. I ate a pack of peanut butter crackers from the vending machine. I sat on a concrete bench in the orange light, and I thought about Marcus Webb, and I thought about the tomato soup, and I thought about what my mother had looked like holding her coffee cup. Something a man named Roy Cutler said to me, Roy being 59 and the owner of the building where my efficiency sat, Roy having come upstairs to help me carry the few pieces of furniture I was leaving behind. Roy said, standing in the empty doorway of my little apartment, "You're going to come back someday, and none of this is going to look as big as it feels right now." I did not know if he meant the town or the pain of leaving. I have thought about that sentence many times in 11 years. I'm going to compress 11 years into what it actually was, which is work. I got to Greensboro with $340 and got a job at a warehouse within 4 days at $14.20 an hour. I rented a room in a house with 3 other people for $408 a month. I kept watching Terrence Okafor's videos, and I found more like them. And I started reading books, actual books, about real estate finance, which I got from the public library on Summit Avenue. At 25, I got a job at a property management company called Harlow and Associates, working as an administrative assistant for a man named David Harlow, who was 51 and did not know that I had been studying everything he did for 2 years before I walked into his office. He found out eventually. He promoted me within 6 months. At 27, I got my real estate license. At 29, in partnership with a woman named Sandra Ikeji, who was 33 and had built a small portfolio in Durham, I bought my first property, a duplex on Elm Street in Greensboro for $142,000. We rented both units within 3 weeks. At 31, I bought out Sandra's share of the duplex and bought a second property on my own, a commercial unit in a strip mall in High Point for $208,000. I leased it to a dental practice. They are still there. At 33, I had a net worth I'm not going to name exactly because it doesn't matter to the story, except to say it was enough. It was more than enough. It was past enough and into territory that still sometimes made me feel like I was looking at someone else's bank statement. And then one day, I was sitting at my desk in my apartment in Greensboro. I was alone. It was 6:45 in the evening. I was eating takeout Thai food, and I pulled up the county property records for McDowell County, West Virginia, the way I had not done in several years, and I looked up the Mercer block. It was listed. Harold Prewitt had died in January. His estate had listed the building at $340,000, which was actually overpriced by about $40,000 given the current condition, but not by so much that it was impossible. I sat there with my fork in my hand, and I did not think about Darren Hollis or Stephanie Vance or Marcus Webb or any of them. I thought about the building. I thought about the market. I thought about the conversion cost for those upper floors, which I estimated at around $85,000 to $110,000, and the potential rental income and the timeline. I did not make a decision. That's what I want to say about that moment. The decision had already been made somewhere below where I could feel it. I was just catching up. I put down the fork. I picked up my phone. I called a real estate attorney in Beckley, West Virginia at 6:51 in the evening, and left a voicemail. The closing was on September 28th, a Thursday, in Beckley. But the part I need to tell you about happened 2 days before that, on a Tuesday evening, back in Sullen Creek for the first time since I had driven away at 23. I had come in to walk the building with the inspector, a man named Paul Geither, who was 48 and methodical and very good at his job. We spent 3 hours in the Mercer block with flashlights, going floor to floor, Paul narrating everything he found into a recorder, me taking notes. The roof needed work. The electrical on the second floor was outdated. The ground floor bones were excellent. I knew all of this. The inspection confirmed it. After Paul left, I stood outside on Clement Street in the early evening light, and I thought about whether I was hungry. And I decided I was, and I thought about Patsy's. And I decided that she was still there. Patsy Vollmer, who was now 75, was behind the counter when I walked in, and she looked at me for a second and then she said, "Caleb Duran? The way you say a name when you're solving a puzzle? Hey, Patsy, you look like you fell into some money," she said, not unkindly. I sat at the counter and I ordered the soup, which was tomato, which felt like something, and a biscuit, and I was halfway through both when Darren Hollis walked in. He was 36 now. He looked mostly the same. He saw me and stopped walking. Actually stopped walking. In the doorway. Caleb. "Hey, Darren." He came and sat 2 stools down, because that is what you do in a small-town diner. And Patsy brought him a coffee without being asked, because she knew his order. Because that is also what happens in a small town. We sat for a moment. "Heard you bought the Mercer block," he said. News travels at a specific speed in a place like Sullen Creek. The speed is immediately. "Closing Thursday," I said. He nodded. He looked at his coffee. "That's a big thing." "It is." Another beat. "I want to say something," he said. "Okay." He was still looking at his coffee. "That night at Patsy's, when I said what I said, I want you to know I've thought about that. I thought about it when you left, and I've thought about it since." I looked at the side of his face. He had a line near his eye I didn't remember. I wasn't trying to be. He started. "I know," I said, and I did. That is the thing I have always known, and the thing that made it harder than if I didn't. I know you weren't. I just thought I was being realistic. I know. I never thought. He stopped. "Tried again. None of us thought you were actually going to. I know that too." He finally looked at me. He looked like a man who has been carrying something for 11 years that he thought was a normal amount of weight until someone showed him it wasn't. "Are you angry?" He said. "I thought about that. I actually thought about it. Sitting there with my tomato soup, I checked something inside myself, the way you check a pocket for your keys." "No," I said. "I'm not angry. I would be. Maybe. But you would have left too if it was you." He thought about that. "Probably," he said. Yeah, we sat. Patsy moved around behind the counter. Outside on Clement Street, a truck went by. "What are you going to do with it?" he said. "The building," and I told him. The whole plan. The ground floor commercial units, 2 of them, which I already had 2 inquiries on. One from a woman named Cora Matis, who wanted to open a small bakery, and one from a telehealth company that wanted a local satellite office. The upper floors, the conversion, the timeline, the way I saw the math working out over 5 years. He listened. Really listened the way he hadn't 11 years ago. Maybe that was age. Maybe it was the building, and what it meant that I could buy it. I don't know. Maybe he had just learned, in 11 years, something about listening. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "The telehealth thing. Does Sullen Creek have the infrastructure for that? Like the internet situation here is..." And that made me laugh. Actual real laughter, yeah, I said. "I've been looking into that too." We talked for another 45 minutes. When I left, I paid for both coffees, not to make a point, just because he was there and I had the money. I walked back to my rental car, and I sat in it on Clement Street, and I looked at the Mercer block in the early dark. And the front of it had a light on inside from where Paul and I had been working earlier and hadn't turned it off. And the light came through the old windows in a long shape across the sidewalk. Something in my chest was very still. Not happy exactly. Not triumphant. More like a clock that has been running slightly fast for 11 years and has just now found the correct time. I did not sit there very long. I had calls to return. I had a contractor in Columbus I needed to reach before 9. I had a spreadsheet open on my laptop in the hotel in Beckley that still had 3 formulas I needed to check. I started the car. Want to be honest about what the 11 years cost? I missed my father's back surgery in 2019. Because I had a closing I could not reschedule, and I told myself it was a minor surgery, and it was, technically, but I was not there, and he did not say anything about it. And that is somehow the worst version of that story. I missed Thanksgiving for 7 of the 11 years. I missed it deliberately. Not because I was busy, but because I had a particular feeling when I thought about going back that I do not have a good word for. Like standing at a window, looking in at a room where the light is warm, and you know it would be warm if you open the door, and you still don't open the door. I had a relationship with a woman named Alicia Tran, who was 30 and an architect. And it lasted 2 years and 3 months and ended because she said, sitting at my kitchen table, very calm, not angry, "You are always somewhere else. Caleb, even when you're here." She was right. I know she was right. I had nothing to argue with. What became clear after the Darren conversation, after the Mercer block closing, after I stood in that building with the key finally turning in the lock, I had spent 11 years building something real. That is true. It was mine, and it was earned. I had also spent 11 years making sure I was right, about the town, about what they said, and somewhere in there, the work and the proving myself had been so tangled together, I could not find where one ended and the other started. That does not make the work less real. The duplex on Elm Street is still mine. The dental practice is still paying rent. The Mercer block is real, but Alicia Tran is not coming back. And my father has a scar on his back from a surgery I was not present for. Some things do not come back. That is just a fact, and I am not going to dress it up. What remains? The work remains. My ability to build things remains. The specific education of having left and returned, the way it changes what you see when you look at your hometown, that remains. My mother called me the night of the closing. Her voice had something in it I had not heard before. Not pride, exactly. More like relief. Like something she had been holding for a long time, could finally be set down somewhere. That remains. It is late January now. I am in Sullen Creek more than I have been in 11 years. This morning I was at my kitchen table in the apartment I'm renting on Marsh Street. Temporary. For now, while I figure out what the longer arrangement looks like, and the light was coming in at a low winter angle, and I had my laptop open and I was going through the Mercer block, contractor bids for the second floor conversion. Cora, Mathis signed her lease last week. She's going to open the bakery in March. Her name is on the lease in black ink, and when I look at it, I feel something I don't have a word for. Not pride. More like recognition. Like seeing something you drew on paper appear in the physical world. My relationship with my father is different now. Not better or worse. Different. We went to breakfast 2 weeks ago. Just the two of us at Patsy's. And we sat and ate eggs and talked about the building and about the Mercer family, who built it in 1941, which we had both not known. And there was a stretch of maybe 20 minutes where we talked like two men who liked each other and were interested in the same things. Not like a father and son with 11 years of distance folded between us. That was new. I am still understanding what to do with it. The thing that used to hurt when I thought about that Tuesday in March 11 years ago. The tomato soup. Darren's voice, the way Stephanie looked at me. It's still there when I reach for it. I can still find it, but it sits differently now. More like furniture than fire. I looked up from my laptop this morning, and out the window I could see the Mercer block from here. Just the upper corner of it. The brick and the old window frames. And a pigeon landed on the ledge, and then thought better of it, and left. Down on Clement Street, a man I didn't recognize was walking a dog. The dog stopped to smell something. The man waited. They kept going. I turned back to my laptop. The contractor bids were $94,000 apart, which was a problem I knew how to solve. I am a person who left and came back and bought the thing. That is who I am now.